everyone, and welcome to A Going Global, a legal podcast for today's global challenge. This podcast is a collaborative initiative between São Paulo State University, Unesp, represented by Livia, Porto, and Luísa, Sasaki, and Newcastle University, represented by Ekaterina, Iosifova and Cadence Willis. In this episode's titled Global Law and Extractivism, we explore the legal dimension of extractivism in an increased complex and divided global landscape. To enrich this discussion, we are joined by Professor Eduardo Diniz, who holds habilitation in criminology and PhD in criminal law from the University of São Paulo, USP, and is affiliated with the ARC Foundation Amazonia R&D Center, Manaus. We are also joined by João Victor Giannichini, PhD candidate at the University of Frankfurt, Germany, supported by the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung and holder of an LLM from USP. This episode has been structured into 3 parts to facilitate a more in-depth discussion. In each segment, we will guide you through different aspects of this topic. This is part 1. We hope you enjoy it.
It's a pleasure to receive in your podcast. Thank you to accept this invite.
Well, thank you all, Livia, Luísa, and also a pleasure to meet you, Katherine and Cadence, and a renewed pleasure to work again, to collaborate again with João, former student, but now very good friend that I do have, a researcher that I respect a lot. Thanks for the opportunity for sharing some of the results of our research here at this podcast, and I hope that we can have a great discussion.
Well, also from my side, I'd like to thank you a lot for the very kind invitation, for the opportunity of discussing such a relevant topic with all of you. And of course, I'd like also to thank all the organizers of this podcast in the name of the institutions of Unesp, the State University of São Paulo, and also from the University of Newcastle. And I would also like to greet all of you that are interviewing us today and participated in the dialogues from Brazil, Livia, Luísa, and then from the UK, Katherine and Cadence. I hope we're having a very nice dialogue, and I'm very interested in knowing also your critics about our text. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So to start this discussion, our first question is, how do you see extractivism dividing the world nowadays, considering the new international arrangements like BRICS and the US current approach with Trump administration?
Well, actually, what I can say about that, thanks for the question, Luísa, is the fact that we are putting a lot of focus on extractivism, on the negative aspect of it, and then we don't have proper imagination to understand the role of the energetic transition, the role of the huge potential, for instance, that we Brazilians have related to alternative sources of clean energy in this planet, right? We simply forgot to, we are neglecting climate mitigation in the country. Yeah, well, in my opinion, and that's something that I can say very easily. In my opinion, we're doing a very bad job related to oil and gas. We just announced a new platform of oil and gas very close to the Amazon rainforest. I've been trying to follow all of our governance mechanism related to energy transition in this field, oil and gas, and very unfortunately, there are a lot of rollbacks in this field as well. On the positive aspect of it, Brazil has a huge potential to foster green hydrogen, and we're not exploiting it properly, in my point of view. We have sun the whole year. We have clean water, still have clean water to exploit it. And we do have logistics to reduce the costs to exploit green hydrogen. We could be in partnership with a lot of UK labs, for instance, do a great job here in the country. Related to extractivism, we are still suffering under very primitive regulatory policies. We still conceive we are still highly focused on imposing limits, right, to traditional extractivism. We've been applying our enforcement rules very selectively against traditional communities that depend on traditional extractivism, and we're still not able to understand the role of modern extractivism among us. There are huge supply chains moving a lot of environmental degradation without proper regulation here among us. And this is not our fault. This is not the fault of our own traditional communities. Just take a look at who owns almost all that modern extractive industry. They are Canadians, they are from US, they are from Europe, multinational companies. Also, a lot of companies coming from Asia that bring a lot of negative impact among us, but without a proper regulation, without being even submitted to proper control. It also reflects the great divide in this planet, but not exactly related to the Brazilian jurisdiction. It's clearly we can see it much more clear when we look at the Venezuelan society, right? We just saw very recently international interventions in the country. If you look at the data, Venezuela, they take down much more trees than Brazil, yeah? And we saw an international intervention there in the country that caused a lot of displacement from a criminal network that exploited extractivism from Venezuela to Brazil. And not only from this criminal network, but also from the most disenfranchised in the country. They are all in our border, yeah? And then we should be avoiding that those people suffer more and more with what we call climate migration, and what we in Brazil conceive as being environmental racism. Yeah, so this is somehow the big picture, and I would say that to overcome this situation, we need much more important than regulatory policies would be proper social control. Yeah. Whenever we think on social control, we think on formal social control, more police in the area, and of course that will cause more problems than the solution. Police can't be the first line of defense. They are very important. The complete reshape of everything that we conceive under public security should be applied in the region. The territorial presence of law enforcement authorities is also very important, but much more important than that is to start creating new metrics according to our own context, to understand how to evaluate the impact of the territorial presence of local institutions, fostering resilience among and between local communities. And then we can start thinking on an environmental legislation and regulatory policies that will potentialize our capacity to address environmental justice.
Thanks a lot for the answer, Eduardo. And if I may jump in now and maybe comment also some things related to the question that has been posed, a very challenging question, by the way. I would also like to propose maybe a turn in the question, not how mining and the minerals and this political economy of mineral exploitation, and I would like to pose a turn on that. Not how is it dividing the whole world, but how it combines us all in a global scenario that connects local dimensions and the global dimensions. And how can we think about that? Of course, we can see that the International Division of Labor shifts the production and the extraction of minerals to global south countries. For example, Brazil, for example, countries in Africa that are rich in critical minerals, as is such the discussion right now. And we have this shift towards the International Division of Labor that these countries should be the one that are exploiting these minerals in a severe environmental exploitation settings and also work-related exploitation. So framing it like that, people tend to, and also political discussions and discourses tend to shift blame towards the exploitation of this kind of mineral exploitation to global south countries. But I would like to shift this divide, and then to track how global north countries, if we can accept this division, how global north countries are also connected to this exploitation. I think we should not be thinking about the division or the divide that the exploitation of minerals and also critical minerals is, as it's the discourse nowadays. We should be thinking about how it connects us all, and how also global north countries are somehow complicit to this exploitation, to the severe exploitation, not just of the environmental, or of the environment, better saying, but also of the severe work exploitation that is happening until nowadays. And I think that the shifting blame strategies that are associated with this discourse of the division, of how this blame is being shifted to global south countries, can also be used as a neutralization technique. Yes, we from the global north, we from very developed countries, we are becoming even more green. Look, we have electronic cars. Wow, it's the best evolution, technological evolution that we could be having. What are the costs of this green strategic transition? This, I think we can trace and then maybe combine us all in the development, or maybe also in the deepening of these exploitation strategies. And I think if we can think about this topic in a continuum, in something that binds us all, we could also think about solutions in a more comprehensive setting that would maybe benefit all of us, considering the power relations that are related also to this international division of labor, and how we could maybe mitigate these power relations, how we could mitigate severe exploitation of the environment, of labor, and also try then to come up together with new solutions regarding that. So thank you, and I'll be very interested in knowing also your perspectives if you'd like to jump in.
Just to add a very little comment here, João, and if I may, it's fascinating how you organize the field around a realistic approach on the power dynamics, right? And then I was thinking that my own approach was more, I was trying to be more Brazilian in that sense, and trying to understand the role of sovereignty here in this answer, right? Because they asked us about the role of the U.S. Geopolitics among us, and the role of the BRICS countries among us, right? And sovereignty here is a very. It doesn't matter if it, in my opinion, if it's under the U.S. influence or under a more, let us say, global South approach with the BRICS countries. That concept is in dispute, but let us use it here to make it easier our conversation here. It doesn't matter what kind of color are we looking at here, but we need to overcome the idea that our own resources are closed in a sanctuary, right? They are closed into something that, okay, so they don't have the right to exploit nature here, you know? We need to avoid here any kind of moralistic approach that says, okay, local communities, they don't have the right for a sustainable use of their own resources. What do I mean here? That I'm not sure if our UK colleagues, our British colleagues, if they're familiar with the fact that there are more than 30 million inhabitants in the Amazon, right? In the urban Amazon, we have a lot of local communities living there, you know, and in a state of, they are highly neglected. Not only Brazil, there are other 8 jurisdictions there. Yeah, so we need to embrace them somehow. Everything that we try to conceive under legislations and under regulations should be, in my own opinion, should be social related. You know, should be community-led initiatives that would allow us to come up with something with a new blueprint, not only victimizing us, right, but a new blueprint that says that Brazil can be a powerful global supplier of energetic transition. That's my point here, right? And I think that then we can our answers, they are very complementary in that sense, right? Janikine addresses a lot the power dynamics that are around this debate, and I want to emphasize a little bit how we can conceive sovereignty and community-led solutions here.
Livia, I'm so sorry. If I may jump in before we go on to the second question, I have some comments on the answer of the first one, if I may raise them. So I really liked how you both framed this issue by reviewing it at the local level and what problems are present there, and then going that it is not only the problem at the local level, that there are many countries indeed that possesses maybe greater economic power to do this very green decisions, for example, about electric cars, and that we indeed, in a way, exploit the southern countries in the south. So I'd say my question would be in this regard, where exactly, so Professor Eduardo, you have mentioned that there should be a complete reshape of the policies in the Brazil, in the way that we should address the social aspect, social policies, and the indigenous communities that now suffer the most from these practices. And the question is where exactly this shift should occur, because there are countries with greater political and economic power that may be exploiting the resources. And given that Brazilian economy relies on this extractivism, where exactly this shift should happen, on what level? Should it happen in Brazil, or should it be more a pressure from, for example, international organizations? Because you have mentioned in the article that there was a criticism from the international community, that there was a letter from a few companies, 41 as far as I remember, that refused to participate and provide Brazil with necessary resources until the situation, the position on the illegal mining and taking more safeguarding measures will not be taken. So do you think that is it possible for this reshape to happen within the current Brazilian government? Or, for example, as this criticism from the international community, it should be a pushback, and also the recognition of countries from the north that this is happening, and they also have a responsibility for this and a key role to accommodate Brazil with the necessary, in a sense, maybe solutions or maybe practices, measures, technologies to resolve this problem.
Oh wow! What a great question! What a complex question. I will try to organize my answer here, and of course that I would love to ask for João's help in this regard as well. João is doing his research in one of the leading schools on planetary sciences there. So please feel free to add any comment at any time. Okay, João. And Katherine, if I may ask you, please don't call me professor. So I just left my tenure at the university. Just Eduardo is enough for me. Yeah. The most important thing is for us to have a powerful debate as we are trying to establish here, right? Your question, I will summarize it in one single word. Yeah. You asked me where, and that's for me, that's the most precious question, because that brings us a room for something that is not exactly well received internationally, which is the idea of territorial justice. It's in the territory. Thanks for the opportunity to say it in this podcast. Yeah, it's in the territory. And then our social theory, the Brazilian social theory, it's huge. It's immense on territory. It's so rich and it's so powerful. And it's very hard, just making a short comment on Livia's question. on multilateralism. It's so hard to understand the world in such a homogeneous packets, even universalist approaches are nowadays so outdated. Of course, they are all under strain here. Yeah, of course, that a more pluralistic approach should be driving everything that we conceive it under global laws, right? Um, um, it's very hard to conceive the world in a homogeneous and universalistic way, but also it's very hard to conceive the Amazonia as something homogeneous. Oh, yeah, it's a couple of trees there. It's a rainforest or something in the tropics, No, there's so many Amazonians. The territory is so rich, right? The level of complexity in the territory is more than plural here. Let us begin with one thing that is maybe a common grammar in this territory. Yeah, the crazy colonial legacy that nobody knows who owns land. Land rights, land tenure, land use, and land governance. It's a universal grammar wherever you go in the Amazon. It doesn't matter if it's in the Brazilian, in Venezuela, Colombia. Nobody knows. Only, or not only, so not precise this data, but only 10% of the land there, of the communities there, they have land tenure. 10%. That's crazy. In that huge area, that's the beginning of all conflicts. The root cause of almost all conflicts in the Amazon is the fact that I don't know who owns the land. Yeah, and why does it matter a lot to understand environmental legislation, but also to understand the role of international? I don't like the word intervention because it can be, so harsh. Very easily it could be captured by populist approaches. Yeah. But international collaborations or international alliances or international, please help me with something better, with a better word than that. Yeah. So if you look at the territory, its own dimensions, and in a very Brazilian way, the used territory, it's Milton Santos, is geographer. I've been discussing that a lot with Leonardo. We have some disputes related to this concept, but the used territory is related to the local communities that are living in that territory. Yeah, that's a live territory. Yeah, it's a social related framework to start understanding it all. And once we define it, where, yeah, we can start talking about how, right? First of all, land rights. There's a desperate need to focus on land rights in this area. Yeah. I've been visiting, I have the privilege to work with an institution there, which is the Fiocruz Amazonia. Tremendous people, they're doing God's work there. With very few resources, they are doing a tremendous research there. I would love to introduce you to some of those scientists there. I had the privilege to follow them by evaluating the water quality in the area. And then I visited some areas that were already regularized, already submitted to land policies. And what happened, Katherine and Cadence, but also you, maybe Luísa and Livia, they never visited the region, maybe as well. They're literally drinking water from sewage. In the biggest basin of this planet, in the area where the hydrological security is supposed to be the best in the planet, yeah, they don't have access to clean water. So land tenure is very important, but it's only the beginning of it all. Complementary public policy should follow, right? And then, of course, right, we need to establish regulatory policies that preserve an area, but also creates room for proper income to local communities, unless they will, of course, perish, right? You have your income. I know that Giannichini now has a tremendous scholarship there in Frankfurt, right? So they do need income at the same way we do need it, right? Because traditional communities, they were used to take down trees. Very good. My grandfather, my father. And what am I supposed to do? Because of your climate morality, because you're now coming from Newcastle Unesp, and then you were trying to teach me how to preserve my own nature, of course that I will break that bridge. Of course that I will disregard everything that you were bringing to me. Of course that you were only incentivizing conflicts in my society or within my communities. That's the point here. So this framework should be aligned this way. And then in a positive agenda, international coalitions, they should be supporting this scaling up of interventions here from one hand, and in the negative aspect, of course, there are powerful criminal networks that are exploiting local resources there. Extractivism is not an abstract category, yeah? It's something that should be understood also in its concrete dimensions, in concrete realms, yeah? Those criminal networks, they are not only the organized crime that we in the south of Brazil are used to, such as Primeiro Comando da Capital, Comando Vermelho, yeah, those traditional gangs that we do have in the south. They differ a lot according to the territory. They have new formations there, and they are not, in my opinion, that's my opinion. Please judge me for my naivete or for my arrogance in that sense. They are not the most important part of the problem, because they are articulated with something much more powerful, which are the multinational corporations that are exploiting those natural resources in a very indiscriminate way. And they are from US, Canada, Europe, Asia, etc. Yeah, and then, okay, but then we do have supply chain laws. I know that Gianecchini knows a lot about that. He, I don't know, he has a tremendous experience in this field as well. Please feel free to add comments here. Yeah, they only create a facade of legality here. Why is it so? If I don't know who owns the land, right? I don't know who owns the land. But Cadence, she does have a land tenure. What she realizes then? That she can sell everything to European or to foreign multinational corporations with everything compliant with our regulatory policies. So why should she produce? Why don't she simply buy everything from her neighbors? It's much easier for her. And then she can sell everything in, certified. Everything enters into the European market certified. Yeah. So the role of these international laws, international regulations, these international coalitions should be also supporting strategies that disrupt those networks. That's my point here. Not only creating a facade of legality, such as João just mentioned before, that simply suppose that we Brazilians, that we can support, a sustainable way of exploiting those resources, that simply suppose that we are the problem. Who were you guys? Where were you guys 80 years ago or 100 years ago when your companies, they brought all those problems for us? And I don't have any resource here. I don't even have a tenor here. And you can imagine that I can simply, everything creates an over-compliance regime here that simply suffocates local communities there. And then I can't, for instance, take down some trees to, let us say, cultivate some chicken to feed my family. I am the criminal then, and then we don't have appropriate tools, to hold those multinational companies accountable for everything, for all wrongdoing that they are bringing to us. Yeah. So this is my first reaction to your complex question. But please, João, help me addressing this answer.
Well, thanks a lot for the question. First of all, Katherine, it's a very challenging and complex issue, as the problems that we face in the Amazon also have a very complex nature and share that. And the questions then also should accompany the challenging environment that we face. Yeah. And also the connections, as Eduardo was saying. And then I thank you a lot for bringing this to the table. That is the why are these problems really connected on the first hand. And that's what I was trying to bring in while answering the first question, which means that we are all connected. When we think about these problems and trying to divide problems in each place of this earth, in each place of this planet, is, I think, at least the way I see it, that is the wrong way. I think we should think it in a more holistic way, trying to understand where is the exploitation coming from and where is it going to in the end. Because this is how we can really understand that this problem is not local. It may be global, if we would, and if you will, bringing and then bridging the global and the local frameworks towards understanding this problem. And then I think that Eduardo touches a very important issue that is right now this over-reliance on supply chain management on the one hand, if we are going to the management and science and management studies, and then going also to the legal studies of the corporate sustainability due diligence directive and the legislations that come together using the same shape, using the same grammar towards addressing supply chain violations, which means compliance, due diligence, as Eduardo was saying, creating an over-compliance problem there, meaning increasing the costs of production maybe in those spaces, whereas not ensuring that these practices are really sustainable, so to say, if we would like to also use the concept of sustainability here, which is also being challenged right now. And this, I think, is a framework that maybe helps us to reduce a little bit of the complexity, but also tries to offer us a better solution of trying to understand this problem, of why it cannot be just understood as a local problem. No, it's a problem of the Amazon people. The Amazon people that live there, they are the ones who commit these offenses, they commit the crimes. We are here just buying it. We don't have any problem. We are not related to that. I think this is a form of moral neutralization, once again, trying to bring the first rationale again to answer this question, but trying to think, no, we are all connected in the way that the supply chain brings us all together. It brings the violation and it shatters also this production and this communication of the production towards also or with also the developed countries that buy those products and that also engage with these critical sites of production. So I think thinking about that and thinking not in dividing, but in bringing those problems together, we can also think of strategic solutions. As Eduardo understood your question regarding territory, we should think about territory. Of course, I agree with that a lot. And then maybe bringing that or jumping in that question, in that rationale, I think we also have to think in territory. We need to think about the people who live there and what kinds of activities or what kinds of opportunities, of life opportunities do these people really have, and how they can really come up with a sustainable way of living, of affording a life in those kinds of, if you will, critical territories. So we also need to think about that and maybe come up with solutions that try to engage in a more practical way, trying to think about, how can we engage and bring better opportunities of sustainable production, of bringing maybe new forms of production that can also enhance the quality of environmental quality in the region, and also education patterns of trying to enhance production quality in those regions in a more sustainable way. So I think that, it's a very complex issue. We could maybe think about that the whole day, and also maybe the next years about that. So thanks for posing it again.
Thank you very much for providing such a detailed response. It's very interesting to hear. Yeah, so if nobody else has anything to add, we can, I think, continue with the second question. If you could repeat that, Livia. Sorry for interrupting.
Well, Katherine, I do have something to add here. And I took a look at my notes here, and then I realized that I didn't answer to your most provocative question, which was the role of local government, right? And I don't want to skip this question, especially in this moment where we are about to face elections here, right? Whenever you speak about rollbacks, what is the hope that we do have here? That there will be a regulatory turn, right? And in my own opinion, that's my opinion, João, please, I can be responsible for that if you want. I didn't see that turn in the last 4 years, Very unfortunately. Very unfortunately, I was expecting it. Um, but if you look at everything that the Yanomami peoples they suffered there, there is a tremendous nexus between genocide and ecocide in the north of the Amazon, especially in Roraima, which is very close to Venezuela. The mercury catastrophe in the region, the level of conflict in the area is as big as ever. That's my point. Yeah, we don't have a denialist approach. That's true, but I need much more than denialist approach. I need much more than simply say nothing. That is complicity by silence. That's bystander, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, and after the climate conference in November last year, I was expecting to see the Amazon rainforest out of the agenda, the political agenda. And why is it so? Because we didn't experience any kind of regulatory turn. Worse than that, the fact that we don't have the construction of a common framework with shared goals around environmental preservation, they are very shy. We need something more substantial. That's what I want to address as my opinion. Um, because it's a negative asset in the elections. We're about to face elections in October this year. And for the far right trends, of course, it's an agenda that is not exactly, they're not exactly sympathetic to this agenda. But if you look at the progressive representatives, what are they doing? What are they doing? So, and this is something that undermines our own sovereignty, undermines the capacity that we do have to self-determination. That's the problem, you know. And then you see worldwide trends saying that we need the planetary commons, that we need planetary regulation, that Brazilians should be seen only as custodians of the Amazon, and that would justify at the end. It won't take that much, in my opinion, and that would justify highly paternalistic approaches related to the way that we see the rainforest among us. Yeah.
Okay, so
Should we engage maybe a little bit more in the provocation? I would like to also maybe say some things. I think that the answer is very compelling that Eduardo brought here. It's very, very interesting to think about that. And I think Cadence also wanted to say something. I thought that she also unmuted her microphone, but I will be very brief, and then you can, of course, jump in. I think that this common framework, the way we can see the conflicts and how everything is somehow connected, as we can see, for example, in the discussions regarding planetarity. Yes, I think that this kind of discussion, we have also to understand that we are all connected, and harm is also, in a sense, very much widespread in a planetary way or in a global way, depending on the vocabulary or the concept you want to use. But we also have to see that this global perspective encompasses a local one, and that the local, the critical one, it's the one who needs to be respected. So I think that planetarity does not mean to disengage, or maybe does not mean to not respect sovereignty of the locals, so to say. But I think that the solutions should be the ones who engage with the local communities and local needs regarding that region, and the most disenfranchised of those local communities. And then that they bring the solutions, and the ones that are maybe responsible for supporting it, for endorsing it, or maybe sponsoring it, if we are going to think about more practical ways, then they should maybe endorse and engage with that. But that local sovereignty should be respected, and the solutions maybe should come from there. This would be a critical framework towards planetarity, in my own point of view. Thanks.
right, and if I may ask, do you think that because of the influence of super national organizations or companies on countries from the global north, has it made it more difficult to establish a global framework and solutions because of those companies. We are seeing that countries from the global north are benefiting and becoming resistant to helping with preventing the issues seen with extractivism.
Shall I begin, João? Right. So very good question, Cadence. I would love to engage in more substantial research on this with you all, guys. Well, the field would be in that sense more on environmental history, maybe, of for instance, the Manaus Railway Company, which, if I'm not wrong, there are a couple of files at the local archives there to do that research, which will allow us to understand a little bit the UK presence in the area, for instance, right? Historically, but you have also this continuum, as João was saying, for instance, related to the carbon markets. The UK shareholders are highly present in the area, if I'm not wrong. I just saw the other day, I'm not sure if what I'm saying is accurate enough, but that the Liverpool, the football club, is invested in carbon markets there in the area, for instance, and they disregard majorly. They disregard also these social dynamics in the rainforest. If I don't know who owns the land, there will be coming more and more communities. There's communities that will take more and more trees down, etc., etc. So the carbon that I'm saying that I'm absorbing, I'm actually not absorbing. So that's a very basic concept of greenwashing here. Yeah, corporate greenwashing here. In this sense. There is a very smart, corporate greenwashing. I'm also following here some of the ideas that Professor Laufer in US suggests us to follow. But also there is a Swiss scholar, very smart in this area of business and human rights, Dorothy Bauman-Polly. She has been doing very, very, very appealing research in Africa. And then she says, okay, local multinational companies, yeah, they should be held liable, but we shouldn't be simply creating risk aversion in this area. It's not simple like, okay, so choose, go, goodbye, guys. So stay there with your own problems. I don't know what be accomplished with this. I'm out of the country. So then the kind of how those corporations, they were highly intertwined with local communities. Yeah, many of them are even dependent nowadays of those multinational companies. They will simply suffer more and more, with their with the fact that they were simply living the area. So it's not simply threaten multinational corporations is not a way of creating this common framework, right? I would love actually to collaborate with you if you want to create any kind of empirical research that would allow us to understand what should be those shared goals, yeah, those planetary goals, as João was mentioning before. There are a couple of instruments that we could be applying. For instance, if you go, let us assume that the Liverpool is putting money in the area, in the field, right? If you look at the hundreds of managers that work at the Liverpool, yeah, or if you look at all those stakeholders that are around Liverpool activities, are they motivated to create any kind of harm in the Amazon? Of course not. So you can simply evaluate their motivation, their social motivation to do something good, right? To do something that preserve the. So this is a way that we'll be extracting the shared goals coming from the employees, from all stakeholders involved in that as well. Yeah. Is it possible to create any bridge from those guys that are, let us say, in UK, and from those who are at the front in riverside communities? Yeah. How we can create that bridge? So then we can start talking about this common framework that should be driven environmental regulation, right? Or environmental policies here and there. That would be the kind of research that I would love to be doing with you guys. And that will show us a lot of, let me borrow this word, humility here, because we've been highly focused on the internal validity of everything that we're doing, our legal theories, our our justice frameworks, etc. And we simply neglect the external validity, the need to be a little bit more humble and to be sensitive to the local context.
Yeah, thanks. Also, challenging, interesting question. And the way I understood the question was like more the way that maybe these global players, most powerful players, are kind of monopolizing the subjects that we're talking about, or monopolizing the way they understand the problem and trying to impose some kind of solutions to these challenging environments, if you will. And I think it's the way the question was framed is also interesting to see, and also the kind of solutions that we're facing. And then we go back again to the solutions that we have nowadays in the legal maybe domain, and also in the supply chain management domain. We can see that it's proliferation of different kinds of legislations trying to pose new kinds of regulatory burdens, and trying also to impose a framework towards understanding the problem, as if the only problem in those kinds of regions will be illegal emissions, and trying maybe to criminalize emissions, CO2 emissions in that sense, carbon emissions. And I think that the way they frame the problem and the way they understand it is just a way of understanding it that does not really critically engage to the complex reality of the dynamics that are happening in the region. And I think that if we try to impose this kind of grammar, we also tend maybe to not understand the root causes of what is really happening there. What are the complex dynamics that are happening there? Why is it that some kinds of behavior are being committed in these kinds of critical settings? And if we label them all as criminal, all as a moral blame that these people, these locals have to bear, then we are maybe acting, as Eduardo said, while answering the first question, very selectively, and not really engaging with critical solutions that would really fit the challenges that we should face right now.
Thank you very much for answering. The reason I brought this question is because, so first of all, there is definitely with the current government in Brazil a certain level of doubt that these environmental issues can be dealt with effectively, with the President Bolsonaro cutting the funding for NGOs and eco-territories, and also with the changes to the forest code. It just seems hard how we can change it on the local level at first. And thank you, Cadence, for raising the question with the international organizations, because we see that international organizations on their spectrum are influencing and are doing more harm and are causing these problems in a greater manner, in addition with the inadequate regulations, local regulations in Brazil. And I think that's just to keep a question in mind. And I think what we'll look in this discussion and in general is that in developing this global framework, how we address the presence of international organizations, how do we hold them accountable, and how we at the same time still take into account the national sovereignty, the Brazilian sovereignty, and this territorial justice, as you've said, and how we trying to resolve it on a global scale with the international organizations, and at the same time being sensitive to the local context. And where do we find consensus and the shared values in developing the approach that we can take in solving this problem? So, yeah. I think we can now move on to our second question, Livia.